Everybody, welcome back. So I have my second week of the school year lesson plans to share with you. This is going to be a traditional 5-day week for me, so we'll get into a better rhythm of things, even though it's still not really a typical week. Now, I'm not going to go over my procedural lessons for Math Workshop with you in this video. You can see these listed under math skills, what happens during work time, what happens during closing. These are just all procedural lessons that I spend maybe 5 minutes on before we get started in our actual math workshop. And then you'll also notice in reading, 3 days this week I've just left completely blank, and that's just so I can have plenty of time to work on DIBELS and DRA, because I like to get those things finished and out of the way as quickly as possible. It's not something I particularly enjoy, so I just want it over with. And then you'll also notice I do not have workstations for this week. We need a little bit of time to get into a rhythm and to learn each other before we can really get started with workstations. So in Math Workshop, we get started in my Math Unit 1, Lesson 3, which is forms of numbers, where we're continuing working on expanded form, written form, numerical form, and we do work with 6-digit numbers, but like I said before, I have included versions for those going into the billions place. And I will once again use these place value chips pretty much every day during the week, even if it's just during the mini lesson. They're quick, they're easy, we just leave them at our seats, and we'll go through these just to help build some better conceptual understanding. The place value scavenger hunt on Tuesday, I like to use an almanac for. It's a great way to just begin introducing a few nonfiction reading skills, especially scanning for different numbers. Students love this, and it's so easy to differentiate for different ability levels. And then if I had a $1 million activity, I would recommend, if you have students who aren't quite ready to add that large of numbers, you may want to provide some students with a calculator for that activity. But it's just, once again, a good way to get students thinking about numbers. And then this week, I do begin teaching students the value of numbers and what is 10 times a number. And I really emphasize during these lessons in my lesson plans to not teach students to add a 0, because our 5th grade teachers will be mad at us. So we can't teach that. We have to understand that when we're multiplying a number by 10, it's all shifting in the place value table because we're adding another place to that number. And I will use this resource with my math reference notes. This is a good table, and we'll do this for guided practice. We'll do what you see on the screen with the chips, and this is just helping students begin to develop that conceptual understanding. And then Friday we'll kind of repeat this lesson, but this one would be dividing by 10 rather than multiplying by 10. So this week in reading, we're going to begin the week by teaching my lesson, a really important lesson on abandoning books. I know this is something that we always have to address with our students, because there's always going to be that 1 or 2 or 3 or more students who are constantly switching their book out without ever reading it. These are the students who are running away from reading. So we got to talk about, when can we abandon a book and when do we need to stick with it? And this is the lesson when I introduced our policy, or our class's procedure for status of the class. This is one of my favorite record keeping tools for reading workshop. It's just very effective. There's an optional reading log you can use. Some years I use it, some years I skip it. And then on the other lesson that I'll be teaching is just our guidelines for reading workshop. And this is, we're going to create a class anchor chart rather than print the printable. And we're going to add to that during the week, where we're just really focusing on behavior and what should I see from students during reading workshop time. Okay, so I'm super excited about science this week. We're going to begin the week by talking about producers, consumers, and decomposers. Now, remember, the previous week we've already introduced what are ecosystems, and I'm going to show the Brain Pop video with energy pyramid. If you don't have that though, there's a book, Who Eats Who, that's another really good book. And then after we read the book, we're going to work together as a class to complete the anchor chart that you see where students will write different examples of producers, consumers, decomposers on sticky notes, and then we'll place the sticky note on top of the anchor chart. And then we're going to follow up that activity by making a little booklet that you can see on the screen where students are just going to draw examples of carnivores, omnivores, herbivores. They'll have fun with that. And then the next day we're going to actually make a food chain. I made a prototype here to show you. I found that rather than tying knots through each one, it's easier to weave it behind. I found that saved a bunch of time rather than tying and cutting individual pieces and knots. So this was another fun activity, and they're just going to make a food chain. I encourage students to see how long can you make the food chain. And then we followed the food chain lesson up with another lesson on food webs, and I'll show a Study Jams video for that. And in this activity, we're going to be getting up and doing an interactive activity with yarn where students are going to receive cards of be different types of animals, and we're going to be actually showing the food web. I'm really excited about that one. And then we are going to do a little craft where students make a food chain. Now this is my example, so don't judge the drawing, but I made a tiger-ish, and then my tiger is eating the bird, and then my bird is eating a worm. And the object of this, the goal, is to make it collage. And we'll do that Friday, and I think students will really, really enjoy this. Now, I did throw in an optional game that we're going to play if we have time, and that's a food chain tag, where different students are going to be acorns, some will be squirrels, and some will be falcons. And the directions, of course, are included in this.